another World Series champion, Parker Mushinski. He is a Texas Tech Red Raider. He is an Argyle High School alumni, and we're going to talk about coming up to the big leagues this year, how he got here, what it was like to be drafted, and some interesting fantasy football style questions. So let's get started right now.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Heisman and Brett H-Town Wheelhouse Chansey.
We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we're your daily Astros podcast. I'm H-Town Wheelhouse. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at H-Town Wheelhouse. You can find me at Stros411 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, pretty much any social out there. And I've got a special guest with us tonight. It is Parker Mushinski of the World Series champion Houston Astros. Parker, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter.
What's up, guys? On Twitter, you can find me at Community Park 12, and then on Instagram, it's just Parker Mushinski.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. And, this year for the Houston Astros was special. And, before we get into you and your background, going into this, what all the chatter is around Major League Baseball. And then this team gets Justin Verlander back, a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then the team goes on this run. Your name gets called. How exciting was it to be a part of this ball club in a season like you just had?
Man, it was incredible. Definitely happened pretty soon, really soon in the season this past year. We had just gotten back from Sacramento. We're playing at home, and Mickey just called me in the office and told me I was going to Seattle, and it's pretty surreal. But then this team, man, just look at the guys we had, the performances we had this year. They're just guys that have unbelievable years: Montero, Neris, Stanny, and then obviously JV. A lot of guys. Jordan, you can't forget about that guy. So it's just like, it's unbelievable. And then the way that I got to learn how Maldi controls the game, calls the game, is pretty immaculate.
That's interesting. That has been a hot topic on Twitter. There's been almost this Astros Twitter civil war about Maldonado and this and that. And let me tell you, I've been told by many people, and you're definitely not the first that has talked about the value of Marty Maldonado behind the plate. I know Corey Lee talked about his value. We talked with Luke Berryhill. We interviewed him and just talked about how they last year had brought up the AAA and AA catchers, and they sat down with Maldonado. They sat down with Castro, and they just basically talked about game planning and talked about, evaluating pitchers and knowing your pitcher and all that stuff. And so we do know how much work that they put into you guys, and we're going to get to that here in a second. But right now, you were recruited to Texas Tech out of Argyle High School. Now, a fun fact today is you were the first professional baseball player to come out of Argyle High School, but not the first professional athlete. How does it feel to have that? Is it humbling? Is it surreal? What's that like representing your alma mater like that?
It's the same dream as everybody had when you're a freshman in high school, right? You want to go play college baseball. You watch all the guys on TV, and so it's like you're watching those guys, and then my name gets called, and I get to do the same thing. It's, like you said, humbling, surreal. It's everything. It's just like I've been doing this for I don't know how long, and it was my time for now guys at the high school and everything to watch me in the Astros on TV. Words can't really explain how cool it is.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know, growing up, because Argyle is, you said, south of Denton. And if people don't know, that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's, I guess, in between Dallas and Denton, if I'm mapping that out correctly. kind of in the middle of the DFW complex. You guys, who was your influence? Like, were y'all Rangers guys? Were y'all like just whatever major leaguer? Like, who was your influence? And it's okay if it was not an Astro, just because we're locked on Astros. But who were your big influences in Major League Baseball growing up?
I mean, I grew up a huge Rangers fan. We went to the ballpark in Arlington. It's probably like 45 minutes away or whatnot. Um, so yeah, I grew up watching those guys. I remember one of the first guys I can even think of is Hank Blaylock. Um, he's left-handed swing. I always love to hit all that stuff, and the amount of times I've mimicked his swing and wiffle ball in my backyard is pretty incredible. But and then when it gets to pitchers wise, I mean, Derek Holland, like those World Series runs, I was locked in during class. Probably got in trouble once or twice watching those World Series games, but and so like watching guys like that, and then actually me and Derek are actually pretty close now. We work out
Wow.
together, so it's a pretty small circle there.
No, that's impressive. I can't say that I've ever gotten to work out with any guys that I watch. Of course, for me at my age, we're not working out. We're trying to see if we can get like the senior discount at the IHOP. So I'm
Yeah,
not there.
how's your golf game, right?
Yeah, man. It's like, hey, can we get cheaper tickets to the Astros with the alumni discount? But seriously, so growing up playing baseball, this clearly was something that you were going after. But were there other sports that you played other than baseball? Were you a multi-sport guy, or were you just like all baseball all the time?
So just my junior and senior year, I was strictly baseball in high school. I played football freshman, sophomore year. I was a big soccer junkie when I was young, and I kind of played just rec soccer. I think through eighth grade actually. Had some good guy buddies of mine, and we kind of played that. But yeah, and then my junior year and senior year, we had a small school, so we never had like a baseball off season. So I never competed, but I did off season wrestling with the wrestling coach because I liked him and I thought it was a pretty good workout.
It's funny. I don't even think we had Olympic style wrestling when I was in school. If someone would have said there's wrestling, I would have been like, you mean like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, that kind of wrestling? That's the only wrestling we knew growing up. So, you know, going into getting close to your senior year, close to graduation, when did schools start really noticing you? When did schools start showing interest in, Parker Mushinski and what you had to offer?
Um, that's a tough one. I think back then it was like there was like a date, right? It was like August 1st of going into your junior or senior year where they could call you. I had a lot right off the bat on I guess it would be August 1st, whatever year that was. But I didn't like I kind of hit 90 my junior year, and then that summer I went and pitched in Jupiter and whatnot, and stuff kind of clicked a little bit, and I threw very well. And then all of a sudden it went from I was committed to Tech by then, but it went from like playing at Texas Tech to like okay now you have like an advisors come meet with you. A couple pro teams came to my house and stuff
Wow.
like that. So for us, it happened really fast. I had like almost absolutely nothing, and then all of a sudden, in like a 3 month span, it was college coaches straight to pro guys, and it was kind of weird.
So I'm not saying you had this conversation, but that takes me back to because literally one of my favorite movies is Moneyball, and I love when the Met scouts are sitting in there trying to convince Billy Bean's parents that he should play pro ball. And he said, Billy has five tools. Most guys have one, and we're hoping to develop a second. And we're just saying, you may not know when you're going to stop playing. I just like to me that is completely that is so amazing that you get to experience a conversation like that. And because not every athlete gets that, and Parker, there's literally 750 Major League Baseball players. You're one of those 750. That's a pretty elite group. Who are the people that you credit to getting you to that point as you're growing up from being a kid to a serious baller, going to Tech and things like that? Who are some people along the way that you're like, this person, this man or this woman really helped prop me up?
Well, still this day, one of my people I kept constant contact with, kind of a mentor, my summer ball coach and Van Lanningham. Definitely like amazing human, just kind of helped direct me with the right mindset and stuff into where I want to be. And then we got to college. Obviously, all the coaches and stuff were great, but Ray Hayward was our pitching coach. Still, probably one of the greatest mans I've ever got the privilege to talk to. In constant contact with him. Man, he could talk to me if I was done playing baseball still, or whether or whatever. And so it's those kind of people help me in just like the life mode and trying to be a good person. And then when we get the pro ball, like Bill Murphy, our pitching coach up here, he was my first pitching coach in pro ball 2017. And then another guy, Thomas Whitsett, I think he's like an assistant coordinator with us as well. Um, those two played a very, very big influence in my professional career. So, and then
That's awesome.
obviously my parents, like my dad and mom, like they get all the credit. I can say these names, but my parents, I mean,
Yeah, they're the ones
drove
that
me everywhere, did all of
they're the
that,
ones that right?
sacrifices. So,
They're the ones that they're like, "Okay, Parker, it's time to go home and eat. It's time to," because I do that with my son with basketball. Well, because with the podcast, I'm like, "Son, we're recording at 9:30. It's 9:15 and we're 21 minutes from the house. Like, I need to go." So I totally get that. And it looks like a lot of people took a bet on you and their bet was correct. And so what I want to remind everybody that is that this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is the number one place for all things sports betting, info, stats, and analysis, the latest odds and trends on every professional sport, every amateur league out there, from pro football to the college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. Will the University of Houston Cougars end up number one in the rankings soon? Will they win a national title? Calvin Sampson has them riding a wave that we haven't seen since Phi Slamma Jamma. And if you want to put some money down on that, we know Mattress Mac has, you should go to betonline.net to do that. And if you love sports podcasts, even find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get all the betting information. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. So, Parker, again, thank you for joining us today. And thank everyone for listening to Locked on Astros. We hope that you make us your first listen, and your second listen is Locked on Sports Today. They have everything you need to know in under 30 minutes. They've got the hot take of the day. They've got the biggest headlines, the biggest stories. So check them out on the Odyssey app, Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, just like Locked on Astros. So let's talk about being drafted. You were drafted 7th round in 2017. You went to Texas Tech. I would say a fairly successful career, because a Major League Baseball team doesn't draft a player that doesn't deserve to be drafted. And this was the same year that they won their first World Series title. For you, first tell me where you were when you got the call that you were drafted, and then what was it like knowing that a club that was this good was calling your name?
well, we were home. Sadly, we were number 3, I think, national seed that year at Tech, and we got double dipped by Sam Houston in our own regional. So I was home. It's one of those things I just kind of sitting around a computer. I actually found out on Twitter. I was upstairs and I kind of went to the edge. And my parents were like, hey, mom, I'm an Astro, and I'm just like, what? And just like freaking out. But no, I was just chilling at my house. I mean, obviously, there's people will tell you there's speculation around here to there, but I mean, you try to act like have a normal day, but it's not a normal day because your life's about to change. Like I'm either going back to school next year, or I'm going to start a professional career.
So what's it like having a club? And of course, now it's 2022. You have a club that's been to 6 straight ALCS, 4 World Series, 2 titles. But back then, they're in the process. And I don't know if did that draft come before the World Series?
Yes, that was in June.
Okay. Okay. So But I think the Astros were still like they were playing really well. They hadn't even gotten Verlander, but they get Verlander that year. They win the World Series. Do you even think about stuff like that when you're drafted by the team, or is that just something that's there? I'm me. I've got to focus on what I've got to do to prepare to make it to that level one day.
I mean, I was immediately an Astros fan. Clearly, I remember watching every single postseason game. Springer, like, I mean, I really never knew much about Springer before my life, really, besides just occasionally watching TV. But it was cool because I came in with like a mindset of not really knowing guys and being able to watch these guys play unbelievable baseball. It was, I mean, in the organization like the Astros, I've learned an unbelievable amount. They've brought me from here to here in my career, and it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic.
That is a common theme that I've heard from Dubin, from Brett Canine, from even Josh Rojas before he was traded with Greinke, Brennan Belak back in 2019. We actually we got to interview Brandon Bailey the day he got called up with the
Oh,
Astros.
awesome.
He's now with the Reds, and I want to get your take on this and see if it's the same. Everyone we talk to say that the Astros, they're like overwhelmed, not overwhelmed in a bad way, but they're like so surprised how much the Astros know about them already. And they have all this information that they give you, but they try to design the information so it's not you just drinking from a a fire hydrant. What has that experience been like? Were you with the analytics and everything? How have they brought you up to where they need you to be? And has that been a difficult process at times, or have they brought you along enough to where they've simplified it?
Um, I mean, so to start out, I remember coming to Tri City and Murph sitting me down and kind of showing me. We played. I threw, I think, once at Minute Maid in the Shriners Classic my junior
Okay.
year. Murph sat me down and pulled up my TrackMan from there and said, "Hey,
Wow.
you're throwing this. You can do this. We want to see this." It just happened to be I was pitching against Michael Papierski, which is kind of funny. We were on the
Nice.
same team at
Okay.
that point too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they kind of just they'll sit you down, say like, "Hey, you're able to produce these shapes, right?" And then they'll say like, "Okay, well, this is what we want you to do. This is kind of what you're doing." And then guys, we have a lot of guys in our organization like Murph, Whitset, um, and just in general that'll just break their backs basically trying to figure out a way to make the information consumable to one of our pitchers.
Yeah. And that is what everybody says. And not only that, but when you really dive into different clubs that have had success, like you look at the Patriots in the NFL, or even I can't believe I'm going to mention this name. They said, Bill O'Brien's offense was so difficult that's why they were never like they could never get over that hump. But you hear about these NFL teams that have these like offenses and these defenses that are just so mind-boggling. And now with the amount of information that is out there, I know a lot of the older school baseball guys will say, yeah, maybe we rely too much on the data, too much on that. You as a player, what is your like how do you keep a balance of information overload and staying within who you are to get to that next point where they want you to be?
I think at this point in a lot of our careers, right, our we have a pretty good feel of what our shapes are, right? If I'm looking at, I don't know, you can say a fastball. If my fastball randomly starts to cut, that might be an issue. If it's a little bit one way or the other, I mean, it's not horrible, but like just getting back to that is just we're like when I was in the earlier parts of my in my pro career, obviously information overload. I went from knowing complete zero to hey, this thing's called this. Oh, when you throw, we can read the shape of your pitches on a computer. We can show you this and that. And I'm not used to that. But at this point now, it's been since 2017 with the Astros and being able to converse with all of these highly intelligent people that I kind of have a feel for what I want, what I feel, and then if something changes, that's when we kind of look at and say, okay, that's what we need to fix, as opposed to being like just starting over. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And that again is that's just amazingly consistent from what we've talked about. We've talked to Joe Thon, who is the Fayetteville manager, and just impressed with what he's talked about with these guys coming through. And I want to talk to you about some of the rule changes, the changing game here in the next segment. But I've got to tell everybody that right now that this episode is brought to you by the NHSTSA, and it is the Drive Sober emphasis for them. And we want y'all to know, we want you to be safe. It is the holidays. And here's the deal. You've been hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. Sometimes a few becomes too many. And as the evening carries on, you start to head out and you think, well, maybe I'll call for a ride. No, I'm fine. I'm close to home. It's not a big deal. So you get in. What are the odds you get pulled over anyway, right? It may just be something that might happen where your insurance goes up or you lose your license, you lose your job, you could total your car and someone's life could end. And we don't want that to happen. And everyone knows that out there, the risk of drunk driving is a serious thing and the results could be tragic. We know that everyone won't stop doing this, but we're asking you to think before you drive impaired to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Please play it safe and plan ahead and get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right. So, again, this episode is brought to you by Locked On Astros. We got Parker Mushinski, who is in the house. He is here hanging out with us in the off season. I was like, when your agency reached out to us, I was like, let's bring him on. I loved seeing you go from Sugarland to the big leagues, and I went to a few of your games out there in Sugarland. Um, I think we yelled at you a couple times. I think it was at the World Series or the ALCS. We're like Parker, and I don't know if you heard people yelling your name randomly. That was probably myself and my son. We were kind of fanboying it a little bit, but some rule changes. So what we want to do is I want to talk about rule changes in the changing game. And then at the end, I want y'all to hang in there because we had some fun with Stanek last night, asking him who would be a starter, a middle relief guy, and a closer, and some shade he threw at Kyle Tucker. But tonight, we're going to talk about you constructing a fantasy football team out of only Astros players. So we'll get to that at the end of the show. But in 2023, a lot of rules that are coming into effect are affecting the pitching game, Parker. Now, I know that in the minor leagues that they've started changing things beforehand. I've talked to Jimmy Endersby, Joe Record, and some of these guys about the pitch clock and how that frustrates them. But let's start with this: bigger bases and the pickoff rule. Stanek said he didn't like the pickoff rule because he said he feels like it's not right for Major League Baseball to limit an actual thing that you can do. And, some people can say, I understand the limited mound visits or whatever, but if you go two attempts and you don't get the guy, the third attempt, if you don't get him, it's an automatic base. You as a pitcher, how do you see the bigger bases and the pickoff play affecting you game in and game out, or is it something you just can't really focus on?
I mean, you try not to let it get to you. That's the best way to go about it. There's like when we were told those rules, there was kind of nothing we could do at that point, right? Um, Bigger bases wise, like it makes the base path shorter from every angle, which doesn't necessarily help, right?
Right.
Sometimes that extra inch is the difference in 1 out or 2 outs on double play, right? So I mean, that's different. I know the bigger base at the top. We had a few guys like stumble the first week or whatever, because they're used to hitting that hard bag, the hard smaller one, and then
Yeah.
they would try and beat out a ball to first. And I think, a few guys would just like tumble a little bit, but when guys got used to it, it was kind of normal. And then going on the pickoff thing, I mean, me being left-handed anyways, I always stare at the runner. I was a big fan of the fields that put the clock kind of behind the first baseman, so I could see the runner and the clock at the same time.
There you go.
But I don't. I agree with Stanny on that one. Like, if I want to pick off, say you got a guy like Trey Turner at first base, right? You throw a pitch, he goes foul ball, right? Well, obviously he wants to run. I mean, the guy like Trey Turner probably wants to run regardless. And
Exactly.
so you got to kind of do your thing. But also, if I come set and then just step off, don't even try to pick, that counts as a disengagement from the rubber, like a pickoff. So now I only have two. And say you're sitting there, you're looking, and then all of a sudden you look up and there's 2 seconds left on the clock. You step off again. That's two disengagements. I haven't even tried to hold the runner on yet. So that is kind of something that it takes a little strategy out of it, and definitely going to give the advantage to the base runners. So
Yeah,
I guess
exactly.
just
I mean, well, I mean, when I was growing up, Parker, or when I was young like you, I was watching Ricky Henderson steal 100 bases. I was watching Vince
yeah,
Coleman and Willie McGee and, Marquise Grissom and Tim Raines and all these just fast dudes. I remember Michael Bourne just being a
yeah,
speedy base runner. And I was going to ask this next because, and also one of our viewers said, he's like, how do you feel about the 15-second rule about the pitch clock? I believe I think because I just looked it up and I don't have it in front of me, and I know with runners on, it's different than with no runners.
yes.
Did you work with the pitch clock in the minor leagues before you got up with the big club?
Yes, we've had it the whole year.
Okay.
We had the pitch clock in every single version of the automatic strike zone that you could think of that happened this year. That was at Sugar.
Now, was that something that you kind of would be frustrated because from what Endersby and Record both told me was that if the batter plays it right, he can almost delay it to where he steps in at the last second and then, because you have a routine, right? I mean, I
Yep.
sit here and think about Luis Garcia. Like, is he going to be able to
Yeah.
rock the baby? Is he going to have enough time to deliver that pitch? Framber Valdez, what does he do? He walks around the mound when he's frustrated, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
what did you do to adjust your game so that it didn't have an adverse effect on you and you were effective regardless?
Um, it definitely was difficult. I think the hardest part was coming out of the pen because that clock starts, and that clock when you have coming out of the pen, it's till you have to deliver the first pitch. So if say there's the infielders when they're throwing it around on your last pitch, take a little longer, and then like you want to grab rosin and stuff like that, and you look up and there's 3 seconds left. Well, there's ball one. It was difficult the first few times. I found myself about two or three pitches in really sped up because I tried to hurry and I have more time than I thought. But yeah, it's hard to like you always see JV do, right? He catches the ball, he'll look down at the rubber and swipe his foot, right? That's his kind of reset. Some guys have one, whatever. Some guys look above. I had to find something quick that I could like make sure I was present minded and ready and calm. And so it was just like you have to find the things that you're not used to that are quicker, being able to achieve the same thing.
I that sounds to me like you are on your way to a pretty solid professional career because at such a young age you're having to make these adjustments. We're going to do this, Parker. You and I are going to keep talking because I've got a couple more rules questions in this fantasy football question, and I'm doing this for our audience who's listening. What we're going to do is we're going to end the audio here in the next 30 seconds. And so to get the last 10 minutes or so of this show, you're going to have to go to YouTube, subscribe to our channel, check us out, and listen. You'll want to listen to these last 10 minutes of this show. It's going to be a fun conversation. So for everybody here at Locked On Astros, I'm H-Town Wheelhouse. He is Parker Mushinski. You can find him at Community Park 12. You can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse. Eric the Man Heisman isn't here. You can find Eric Talk Stros at Twitter. So thank y'all for listening. As always, go Stros. All right, so let's keep the conversation going. That will give me a break to edit out. So, Parker, we got these rule changes. Now, I do have a question because I thought I saw this and I might be mistaken. Can the batter challenge an automatic ball strike call? Because I thought I saw Pedro Leon get a strike call and he tapped his helmet.
Yes. So
And
there is
how often does that happen?
so I think that so if it's 100%, the catcher, batter, and the pitcher are the only three people on the field that can challenge.
Okay.
Okay. You get 3 challenges per game. If you get one right, you keep your challenge.
Mm.
So we had at the All-Star break, they shrunk our zone actually 3% off the top and bottom. So it's basically a whole baseball. And then they added the challenge stuff in. So you basically had guys early challenging the low ball that was at the knees or the ball at the belt. And then the auto zone was like, no, that's a ball. But the whole first half of the season, that was a strike because they shrunk the top and bottom. So yeah, and if the batter looks into the dugout, he's not allowed to challenge. It has to be like almost immediate.
Wow. Okay. So what? Okay. So you guys had the automatic balls and strikes. Jimmy Endersby, I remember he got frustrated. We went to a AA game in Corpus, and the umpire really was squeezing him that night. He gave up 3 walks that were actually 3 strikeouts. And he talked to me after the game. He said, umpires don't understand sometimes. He goes, I feel they don't understand like how that changes everything. What do you do when you're on the mound and you just know that you threw 6 strikes, but only 2 were called, 4 were balls, and the guy takes the base? How does Parker stay in the moment and not let that unravel you?
Well, when you're pitching, once the ball leaves your hands, you can't control anything, right? You have to convince yourself that until the ball leaves my hand, I'm in control, and once it does, then whatever happens is at the mercy of kind of whoever's there, right? You can throw a fantastic pitch, guy gets a hit off of it. You could throw the accidental like top shelf breaking ball, and you can then like JV will get those swings like Todd Frazier in a couple years ago. Yeah, that thing. Beautiful swing, right? Probably was supposed to go below zone with it. Ended up being really good. So when those things happen, I remember my last. I threw to Taylor Trammell. It was I had like a 1+ outing, and through Taylor Trammell, I ended up walking him. I think of the 4 balls, I think two, maybe 3 of the 4 balls clipped the zone. I mean, obviously, you can't always get every
Right.
pitch right. Would I've loved to have those pitches? Absolutely. But at that point, walked my guy. Stanny came in. Stanny got me out of the inning, came in the dugout, gave me a big 5, said, I got you. And so one of those things, like, that's why Stanny's one of the greatest guys, too. But besides that, it's just like once ball leaves your hand, there's nothing else you can do.
So let me give you kind of tail off of this, but actually one more question about the shift, and then I want to ask you about veterans and rookies or young players. Um, we know baseball is banning the shift. We've talked on the show at length how Kyle Tucker and Yordan Alvarez and pull hitters are going to have an absolute field day on opposing pitchers. But I have to be careful when I say that around pitchers that are with the Astros because you guys too might be affected, and I don't want that to happen. So I don't want it to benefit everybody. I just want it to benefit my team because I'm a little
Me
biased.
too.
Exactly. So you because I haven't looked at the baseball savant numbers, are you more a fly ball or a ground ball pitcher?
I think I tend to get more grounders.
Okay. So they're saying
It
that the
kind of depends.
grounders.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they say Framber is a ground ball pitcher, and you hear things out there. Well, the ground ball pitchers are going to be more adversely affected. And I guess this falls more into the category, and you may have already really answered it. Certain things are out of your control, so you can't sit there and pout right on the mound that they're not shifted. But Stanek made a good point. They're going to shift as much as they can, as
Absolutely.
far as
They're
they
gonna
can.
ride that line. Yeah.
So what do you think about them banning the shift?
I mean,
Because
I
it's
kind of
become a
see
big
it.
part of the game. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I
Growing
kind of
up
see
watching the
it
Rangers.
close to the pickoff rule to me, right?
Yeah.
It's we shifted for a reason, right? It was yes, you have guys that play shortstop in this, but um, we shifted for a reason because it was easier to get out, right? And so you put a guy in the shift, well, because that guy you can Altuve playing short right field is going to get more outs. Well, more outs equals wins,
Right.
correct? So I see that as the part of the game, right? You're gonna start selling pitchers that can't throw breaking balls because that's what strikes more breaking hitters out.
Right. Yeah, it's like where's it
Maybe
going to
not to that
stop?
extent, but it's along the same line.
And that too, it's so this is what I think is kind of counterintuitive. Baseball wants shorter games, but they want more offense. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. If you have more offense, that doesn't create shorter games.
No,
There's no mercy rule.
no,
This isn't six-man football, my friend. I watched
yeah,
a six-man football today, and oh gosh, I forget the names of the schools. The school had like from like K through 12 had like 160 kids or something. Like a really, really small school.
yeah.
And they basically third quarter it was over. They were up by like 40 or 50 points. Game was done. And to me, look, I personally, I hate the shift, and I just have to admit that. I just hate it because I'm like, "Oh, we could have got that double play if Bregman wasn't pulled over and all this stuff." But I think what they should have done, and of course they haven't hired me or asked me, is give the teams 5 shifts or 6 shifts, kind of like you have mound visits, and make them limit those shifts. Okay, I've got Juan Soto coming up. I've got Jordan coming up. I've got Aaron Judge coming up. I know where they hit. So we're going to shift twice against this guy, maybe in late innings in a close game. I think that would have been kind of cool. Then you add strategy into it.
Wasn't different.
It'd be something different. But I don't think Major League Baseball is ever going to hire me. So let's not even try there. But because I have been very critical of how I feel like they don't market you guys well enough. I think they could be doing so much more for the game. I think the game could be wildly more popular. And they do, if they're listening. I do have some ideas, and I would definitely share it with them if they give me a quick plane trip to New York and let me go see the Statue of Liberty. So, anyways, I digress. All right, so let's top this conversation off with I think a fun topic. And I threw the hook in the water, and man, you took the bait, dude. And I was like, thank you so much, because you could have said, dude, I'm not answering that. So guys, I sent Parker a DM and I said, I'm gonna ask you kind of an off the wall question. It's football season, and we know in Houston that could be good or bad, and it's more bad than good. Dallas is, they're playing really well. Zeke has just stayed healthy.
No Cowboys.
Exactly. So, I'm not a big Cowboys guy. I root for two teams, the Texans and whoever's playing the Cowboys. Parker, I don't know if you've heard, what the best thing coming out of Dallas is, right?
What is that?
I-45 South. And you know what the best thing about the Dallas area is? It's not
What?
Oklahoma. All right, I digress. Those are my jokes for the night. Yeah, 2 drink minimum, folks, and I'll be here till Thursday. No. So if you're constructing a fantasy football lineup of nothing but current Astros players, and you can give me, I had given you a whole list: QB, running back, wide receiver. I went into like center, tight end, nose guard. You can just give me like QB, running back, wide receiver, defensive back. Who are you putting in some of these positions as your fantasy football players, Houston Astros style?
All right. Well, I actually wrote some down so I wouldn't forget. But I've never seen this guy ever throw a football. But just on overall taking control of the field, he's got a rocket arm. Mobility might be a little bit of an issue, but I would say Maldi would be a halfway decent quarterback.
Oh,
Just by straight up taking control, calling the game.
okay.
Um, Probably no read options there, but
No RPOs,
we
huh?
could get some stuff rolling. and then I go to running back. I don't think anybody wants to tackle Luis.
Okay.
Um, he's one. He, believe it or not, had. I remember a few years ago we were timing stuff in spring training. Had, if not the fastest, one of the fastest between pitchers and position players 10 yards sprint.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the guy can move. He is built like a linebacker, big running back, all of that.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Then we'll move on to wide receiver. Lance has got some bunnies.
Okay.
So I would say Lance, and then we can get a little Cole Beasley and put Tuve in a little slot receiver.
So so you're
Um,
saying Altuve would be like your Julian Edelman type player?
yeah, Cole Beasley, Julian Edelman, yeah. Cole Beasley was a Cowboy, so
There
that
you go.
came
There you go.
to me a little bit. He won't like this, and I told him already, but I've told Stanny he'd be my center. Um, Stanny's a protector, right? And so it's just kind of like if I was playing quarterback, I mean, I would like him to be one of the guys protecting.
Okay. Nice. I like it.
Um, One of the hardest positions I thought was tight end. Um, I think there's a lot of guys that could have been it. Stanley could have been it with size wise, but a close second would be like Jordan.
Okay.
He'd probably be a pretty good, just physicality. You could go with Tuck. He's sneaky quick,
Yeah.
smart. And then if you want to go with bigger guys too, Press maybe.
Okay.
I'm sure Press played football in his day, so he probably can do a little bit of both. Nose tackle was really easy, Framber.
I like it.
Um, guys, yeah, he's built like a truck. Nobody, yeah, that's easy. Linebacker, I had to think on this one a little bit, but I put Breggs.
I like it.
He's got a little mean streak in him. I can see he'll take charge of his defense, and really smart guy. I think that'd be a pretty good one.
So hey,
Defensive back,
so hey, real quick on
yeah,
linebacker with Bregman, he does have that. He just got that moxie about him. I remember
yeah, nasty.
I remember one of the playoff series against Boston where he was being interviewed and they said something about what do how do you feel about having the day game, and he's like, well, I don't know that the top fighter doesn't. And he's like, I've never heard of the top fighter not getting the prime spot, and he kind of walked off and trailed off. And
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
he's almost got that like Bill
He's a
Romanowski
dog.
type of like feel. Like, I don't know if you know this, Bill Romanowski literally was under this pile, right? He had tackled the quarterback and he asked the quarterback, "Is your finger broken?" And the quarterback said no. And Romanowski broke the guy's finger under the pile. He was, but and I'm not saying Bregman would hurt anybody, but Bregman's got that like linebacker, like I'm gonna go get him, kind
Yes,
of. I
yeah.
love that. That's perfect.
He's a winner.
Def,
He's a winner, and that's somebody you want in charge of your defense. That's for sure.
definitely.
Definitely wouldn't be afraid to hit somebody for you. I don't think either. Uh, DBs have to go to my center fielders, Chaz and Jake.
Okay.
That was a pretty easy one. Um, Kicker, I don't know of a lot of knowledge of guys that kicked. I kicked some in high school. So I just kind of threw
There
myself
you go.
in
There
there.
you go.
But there could be guys way better than me. I couldn't tell
Someone
you
put
that
it.
one. And then obviously kick
Mhm.
return, Pena.
There. Oh, I love that, dude. He
Yeah.
would be like the Devin Hester of of
Yeah.
of kick returns. I remember Devin Hester when he was at Miami. I'm a big University of Miami fan, originally from Florida. Um, but you know what? I am super impressed. Like, you literally you gave me the rundown, and when you responded with, "Man, I don't know," I quickly said, "Okay, let me give you an accommodation because I'm a teacher. Like, let me break it down, make it easier for you." And you just, dude, you knew the assignment. That's great job on that. I'm definitely gonna clip parts of that and put that out there. But before we go, I wanna end on this. What has it been like, the veteran pitchers and the relationship with them and you young pitchers? How key has that camaraderie been? Because it sounds like you've got a pretty good relationship with this club and the guys that have been there, in the league for a few years.
Unbelievable. Just welcoming. Little quick thing is I debut on Verlander's start date, and as we went 8 innings against Seattle or whatnot, and Javi, who's one of my closest friends, actually, we were roommates in 2019, and he was like pointing like, "Hey, you got to go introduce yourself to JV." And it's his start day. He's got his headphones on, just
Oh
locked
no.
in, and I'm just sitting there and like I'm just up there. I'm like Parker Mushinski, and he like staring still. He just goes, "Justin," just sticks his hand out, not even look. But it was like one of those things that they all kind of joked about it, but it was something like I had to do. Like Javi made sure like I introduced myself to everybody, even though I'd already met some of the guys. But then you have guys like Stanek, Press, Phil, and they kind of just, I mean, obviously, and then Hector's, nobody says anything bad about Hector and Montero. Like, those are some of the greatest. I mean, I don't have a bad thing to say about anybody, really. Lance was always good. I had questions with him. We would talk some stuff out. JV was welcoming as well. So, I mean, this group of guys is just like they're here to win. They'll let you know if they want to win, and either hop on the train or the next guy up will hop on with you.
You know, that is amazing. And those are stories that we like to hear. That's why we like to bring you on, because you've got the major league experience. You've been around, and what you say is completely consistent with what everybody else has said. And it seems like the Astros not only went on the field, but they went off the field. They have a winning culture that they've created from the top down. The things I've heard about Jim Crane are just phenomenal, and the coaching staff, Miller, Murphy, all these guys, Espada, even Dusty. We didn't even get to Dusty. I mean, we'll have to have you back on, because there are a lot of other questions I would like to talk to you about, because I think it's good for fans and people like myself to hear things, to hear from you guys, because social media, I think, has done such a disservice to fans and fandom in general, and it's become so polarizing. But for me to hear you put the confidence in guys like Maldonado and talk about the veterans like you talk about them, that to me is reassuring. Parker, I bet that the Astros are on another run in 2023, and I really think that the World Series is definitely within sight for you guys for a back-to-back run. Thank you for joining us. Tell everybody where they can find you one more time on Twitter, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, Twitter's Community Park 12 and Instagram's just my name, Parker Machine.
Again, thank you, Parker. Argyle alumni, Wreckham Tech Red Raiders, and that's right, and current Houston Astros left-handed pitcher. So, Parker, thank you so much. We'll have you back, hopefully before spring training, and maybe when we get down to spring training this year, our goal is to get there. We'll have to let you know, connect when we're down there. So, for myself, for Eric the Man Heisman, and for all of us here at Locked on Astros, remember to check us out on Apple, Google, or Spotify. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Remember, we're your team every day. Go Stros.